Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. In each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is yet another game about life in a peaceful town, where this time, a bus can even take you into the bustling city. 2008's Animal Crossing City Folk.
Following that is 2013's Killer Instinct, the Xbox One exclusive fighter that brought a rare property back from the past to deliver an Ultra Combo! So, this week's theme, wolves. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Well, I mean, I'm doing.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah, we have these 2 games in particular, especially because we are coming up on one of the most memed about video game release days in quite some time.
It's been so good.
Being March 20th, 2020.
It's been so good. The release of Animal Crossing New Horizons coinciding with the release of Doom Eternal, leading to whether it's the Doomslayer teaching Isabelle how to hold a shotgun, or the meme of the big tough guy asking for a copy of Animal Crossing and the cute girl asking for a copy of Doom, or the pictures of Isabelle in the Doomslayer costume, or like Doomslayer Villager. All of these things have just been the weirdest thing for people to come together over I've ever seen, and I love it dearly.
But it's actually nice for the world to come together on something, because we are right now on the ascent of the panic over coronavirus, COVID-19, and to the point where I had the optional work from home, choice for a Friday, but then starting Monday of this next week, it's kind of an edict indefinitely to work from home. It's going to be weird.
Meanwhile, on my end, this week at time of release is my spring break, and that spring break will continue next week. And then all classes are moved to online only starting on May 30th. And meanwhile, the church that I work for has stopped doing in-person Sunday services. They will all be online from now on. So things are happening. Stuff is shutting down. It is a very scary time to be around. And I can think of no better way to take your mind off of it by sitting down and talking about some video game music.
Yeah, fortunately, we don't have to sit in big groups to talk with each other across the country and deliver more content to you. So hopefully this cheers you up in what is an odd, dark time without March Madness college basketball, because that's so bizarre.
For me, the most bizarre thing has been, do you watch Stephen Colbert at all?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So at time of recording, it is Friday, the Friday before this episode comes out, just to pull the curtain back a little bit. And I watched his show from last night, where they did their first show without an audience. And that was bizarre.
And yeah, he's not the only late night host to do it. I mean, Kimmel's doing it, but then Kimmel had Pete Buttigieg guest host. And it's like, at least give the guy, an audience to laugh to make him feel better about the jokes he's delivering. Because, that Daily Show, it's super, super weird time. And I don't know how to transition this properly, but when we talk about composer headlines from the last week and, video game news about the musicians that we've covered on this show, we talked about last week with The Last of Us. Talking about a post-apocalyptic story with the HBO project. We speculated, I hope they get to bring Gustavo Santaolalla into the project. And it got confirmed this past week that he is on board. So that news only gets better in a time where toilet paper is oh so very valuable at the grocery store, and it's just a strange time.
Just remember, everybody, the virus isn't afraid of toilet paper. Why are you stocking up on toilet paper? I genuinely don't understand. But anyways, that's besides the point. Let's step away from the seriousness of real life and talk about the relaxation of fictional life. Because we're here to talk about my game, which is Animal Crossing City Folk. Animal Crossing City Folk was originally released for the Nintendo Wii in 2008, being on November 16th in the United States, November 17th in Canada, November 20th in Japan, and then released as Animal Crossing Let's Go to the City on December 4th in Australia and December 5th in Europe, which is, I don't think I've seen a staggered release like that before.
But all pretty close for that area, especially for a PAL region at that time.
Mm-hmm. Which is quite weird, except notably South Korea would not see a release of Animal Crossing City Folk until January 28th, 2010. So 2 full years before Korea would get to play the game.
And that's one of the weirdest title differences I think we've seen. I mean, it's one thing to say, Rhythm Heaven, Rhythm Paradise or whatever, but Let's Go to the City feels very mouthy compared to City Folk. And yeah, I can only imagine what the title is in Japanese, but yeah, it's always been so strange because what New Leaf was the same title across the Western regions.
Yeah. So I don't know the exact reason why they would have changed that. Maybe there's something called City Folk in one of the European areas, like a TV show or something. Maybe I couldn't find a reason. I'd actually think to look, but I imagine that's probably what it is.
But it's almost like if it was like Animal Crossing turning over a new leaf. It's it just feels mouthier than it should.
It sounds like a shovelware title. Like it kind of does, right?
Yeah.
It's I don't know why it sounds like that, but that's the tone that it sends me. I don't know. City Folk is the 3rd entry in the Animal Crossing franchise, and we have previously talked about the 4th entry, which was Animal Crossing New Leaf, back in episode 18. As a refresher, Animal Crossing is a chill-out social simulation game, which is that's what it's listed as under the genre on Wikipedia.
It's a good description.
That's a pretty good description, honestly. It's not one I had ever heard, but it fits pretty well. You, the player, play as a human character that moves into a small town inhabited by anthropomorphic animals. The player can name themselves, they can name the town, they can design the flag of the town, they can even create a town jingle, whole bunch of stuff. And they're given a house by the town's resident shopkeeper and businessman, Tom Nook, with a goal of paying off the home at their leisure using the game's currency, bells. And when we say at your leisure, it's at your leisure. You can pay however slowly. You don't have to pay at all if you don't want.
It's interest-free.
Completely interest-free. There are no deadlines. It's great. Once you have paid off the home, though, you are given an upgrade, starting with the main room getting bigger, and eventually moving on to having other floors, such as a second floor or a basement. And there is no time pressure to do anything in Animal Crossing, as players are free to buy furniture, to decorate their house, befriend their animal neighbors, fill the town's museum with fish and bugs and fossils that they dig up, and it all comes together because it runs on a real-time clock, with the time in the game matching the time that is set on your Wii. Shops close and open at certain times, and some fish or bugs can only be caught during specific seasons, or even at specific times of day during specific seasons. And holidays even occur in real time, sometimes even bringing special events with them, like Christmas brings Toy Day, I believe is what they call it in Animal Crossing, or Halloween is also a thing in Animal Crossing that brings an event with it. But the major addition to City Folk, as opposed to the previous title Wild World for the Nintendo DS, was a bus driven by the character Cap'n, who would take the player to the city. This city was a lot like Main Street in New Leaf. It basically functioned exactly the same way, and in a lot of ways had the same shops.
Mm-hmm.
Though it was a bit of it was on a smaller scale, I'd say. More activities were added to the city, such as an auction house, where players could bid on furniture, a salon, where they could change their appearance, which was in previous games, but you didn't have to, unlock it in this one. In Wild World, it was an attachment to Nook's shop that you got as you upgraded Nook's shop, but that in this one, it's just, you get it from the beginning. And more as well. Certain characters who were previously considered special visitors got their own home shops and locations in the city, such as Gracie getting her own high-end clothing store, Crazy Red dealing out of a back alley, as he should be, and Dr. Shrunk performing at the theater. It also introduced characters such as the third able sister LaBelle, who works as the clerk at Gracie Grace, and Kick, who sits on a stoop in front of a closed shop and will shine your shoes for you to change their color to match your outfit.
All right, I'm just going to point out for maybe people listening who thought huh? So it's Mabel, it's Sable. Is it not Label?
So I believe the name is supposed to be Label, but in City Folk, because she works at a fancy high-end clothing store, she goes by LaBelle.
Well, isn't she pretentious then? Maybe she should capitalize the B. I'm just saying.
I believe when you talk to her in City Folk, the name is spelled Labelle, but her actual name is Label.
Okay.
So, yeah. Overall, outside of the city, though, there really aren't many changes between Wild World and City Folk. In a lot of ways, City Folk is just sort of Wild World, but with slightly nicer graphics and on a television instead of your DS. There's really not much to say outside of that. But with that, this is where I'll ask, Peter, what are your experiences with City Folk?
0. I played New Leaf as my first Animal Crossing game. I am looking forward to New Horizons. I'll be getting that, and I'm not going to be among the people demanding it to release it a week earlier because of the coronavirus self-quarantining. But yeah, I have 0 interaction with this game, and of course I always associate it with its associated Wii peripheral that we'll get to talk about. I just always have that connection in mind. But it was interesting to go and learn about the soundtrack of this game, and particularly just note, oh yeah, I know, all of these themes from Super Smash Bros. Brawl.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, they worse in this game? It's hard to tell. We'll get to the Critical 5.
Oh, that's a take.
I'm just a little surprised by the sound of the instruments. The melodies are all catchy, but I feel like the instruments could have been better for this time on the Wii.
And that is actually attached to a criticism many people had about the game that we will get to in a bit. On my end, my sister and I played a bunch of Wild World, and then when City Folk came out, we were super, super excited. We actually had one of those accessories that we will talk about in a while. I'm pretty sure it's still somewhere in a storage box somewhere.
You poor children.
It was weird. I'm pretty sure this is the only game it got used for. And even then, barely ever. But we played the hell out of City Folk. Because obviously in both Wild World and City Folk, you can have multiple villagers in your town. So I had 2. I think Grace had 2. I've already told my story back in the New Leaf episode about Mabel and how Mabel means a lot to me. But yeah, it's a game that me and my sister bonded over a lot, so it's very close to my heart, I think. According to producer Katsuya Eguchi, the conception behind City Folk actually started during the production of Wild World, with Nintendo confirming that At the time, a new Animal Crossing was in development for what was currently being called the Revolution. That was for people that don't know, for children listening, I suppose. The Revolution was the code name for the Wii before it was unfortunately named the Wii. Such a better name. Such a better name. This was confirmed at E3 2005. And in 2006, they then further revealed that very little work had actually been done on the project, as Eguchi had actually been busy with R&D for the Wii itself, and the director of the game was actually the guy working on the Me channel, which was not done yet. In fact, there was, I guess, some column with Iwata where Iwata started to question, like, he's been working on the Me channel for so long. Will he ever be able to move over to working on Animal Crossing? In 2007, the game Dobutsu no Mori, Animal Forest, which is its rough translation, which is the Japanese title of the franchise, was listed among Nintendo's future releases for the year, though obviously, if you were paying attention at the beginning of this part, that didn't work out, and City Folk would not actually be officially revealed to the public until E3 2008. And then, of course, it would release about 4 or 5 months later. I mentioned earlier that City Folk and Wild World are almost essentially the same game, and this extends to the fact that when starting the game, players actually have a choice between starting fresh or moving in. By selecting Move In, a player can transfer their Wild World character into their City Folk town, bringing along with them their shop catalog and appearance, though this does not bring over their bells or any of their items or their house upgrade progress or anything like that. It is just your character and the items you have bought.
That's actually a really neat feature. I didn't know that at all either.
Like, I guess I have vague memories of maybe doing this for my character. But yeah, it's a really cool feature that just, I guess, escaped me entirely. But unfortunately, it actually led to a bug in the Australian version of the game. Some players found that while attempting to connect the two games, the Wii would tell them that they were using the wrong game card. Nintendo of Australia allowed players to send their discs back to them so that they could manually fix the discs and restore functionality, because the Wii, unlike its competition, couldn't do online patches.
And that's always the incredible thing with the Wii, when you remember, like, Skyward Sword had that problem, and Other M had that problem. Like, that was not good.
And the only solution was, send your Wii to us, and we'll fix your save file. Like, and to give people a picture, patching was not a new thing at this time. The PS3 and I think the Xbox 360 were already out, and they could do patches.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Xbox 360 launched in 2005, PS3 in 2006. Like, the same day as the Wii, actually. Or the day before is real close.
There was no excuse for Nintendo to not be able to do online patching, and they just didn't consider it a priority, I guess. So yeah, that's always been one of the most baffling things about the Wii. The most notable part of City Folk's release, though, I think, is the fact that some copies were bundled with the Wii Speak accessory. The Wii Speak was a microphone that could be placed on top of your TV that was able to pick up every voice or noise in the room, allowing players in Animal Crossing to make use of voice chat while visiting friends' towns online. It was weird. Was this the first time on a console they allowed any type of voice chat on a Nintendo platform? Because I know, like,
feels like it, yeah.
The DS had voice chat on, like, Pokemon or something, didn't it?
Probably, yeah.
Like, barely. City Folk is one of 13 games to make use of the Wii Speak, which, if you'd have asked me 3 hours ago, I would have said it was the only game that made use of the Wii Speak.
Yep.
The others being Endless Ocean 2, NHL 2K10 and 2K11, The Conduit, Uno, NBA 2K10 and 2K11, Monster Hunter Tri, Tetris Party Deluxe, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, and Mix Superstar. There was also a channel app meant purely for chatting using the Wii Speak, cleverly named the Wii Speak channel. I have zero memory of this existing. The Wii Speak was weird and is probably the most useless Nintendo peripheral I currently own.
It's up there, yeah.
What a time. Man, remember a time before Discord when you had to do online chat through the game?
A time where the iPhone had only been out for about a year?
Looking into history here, man.
Oof.
What a different time. Speaking of online, though, another neat thing that City Folk did, I gotta give them props for this, because I believe this started it. This might have been in Wild World. I'm probably going to be yelled at that this was in Wild World, but as far as I can tell, this started in City Folk. It made use of the Wii Connect 24 service, where Nintendo could send special items to players over Wi-Fi. The very first item sent over this service was a red Pikmin hat, and then I'm just going to read what the Wikipedia article says, because some of this is nuts. Quote, other items given to players include a Girls' Day updo and top, a St. Patrick's Day hat, a DSi chair, which was white in Europe and black or pink in the United States, a bag of bells for tax day, a bus model for Teacher Appreciation Week, a hot dog hat for summer 2009 beginning, the dolphin model from Pikmin. I don't know what that means. I've never played Pikmin. Ladder shades, a hopscotch flooring, a dresser in the shape of a GameCube, a pile of leaves, an election poster, an anniversary cake, and a Wii locker.
Imagine getting a pile of leaves.
Finally, the gift I've always waited for. Thanks, Nintendo.
That's how you spruce up a good home, is a pile of leaves. Or an election poster with, I don't even know who. Tom Nook? Would Tom Nook be on it? Like, I don't know.
I don't know what that election poster would have looked like. That's a good question. City Folk upon release was met with overall positive but generally mixed reviews. A lot of criticism was aimed at the fact that very little had changed between it and the previous entry in the series that was, again, released on the DS, which kind of loops back into the sound font. Most of the soundtrack of this game is identical to Wild World.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I was going to say, it does sound pretty DS-y.
They kind of just took the soundtrack of Wild World and shoved it on the Wii, which is... I like this soundtrack, but I'm glad they didn't do that for any future title yet.
So here's the thing, yeah, based on my commentary before, I feel like if this were a DS game, great, good. But yeah, especially when you compare like the sound quality between this and then the same year, even months before, Super Smash Brothers Brawl had, you know, the melodies that I guess then must have been from Wild World, but like we'll get to something on the cutting room floor, the sound of a piano. And the piano sounds so much better in Smash Brothers Brawl compared to Animal Crossing City Folk. Like, it's crazy. Also, I'm still stuck on this. I'm still fixated on this. All right, so imagine an election poster. You got Tom Nook on it. It's the red, white, and blue design from the Obama posters because this is 2008, right? In November 2008, it's
that makes sense.
Obama McCain, if you're thinking American-centric. So you got that red, white, and blue art style, and instead of change or hope or whatever, it says
bells.
Bells, yes. You got it. You got it. Yep. Perfect. Like there's some fan art if you want to work it out there.
Perfect. I want to see that. Please, somebody draw that. Please. That has to already exist somewhere, though, right? Like, it has to.
You'd think so. I'm not that creative.
So that sounds like something somebody would have made at some point. Currently, Animal Crossing City Folk holds a Metacritic score of 73, which I think is the lowest rated game we've talked about in the past few weeks. IGN gave it their award for Best Simulation Game for the Wii, which is an incredibly specific award.
Best game with a tanuki in it.
For the Wii.
For the Wii.
But GameStop called it the least improved sequel of the year. To this day, it is seemingly considered the weakest main entry in the series. This doesn't mean that the game did not sell well, though, because as of January 2009, the game had already sold 949,000 copies just in Japan, where it was the 8th best-selling game of that month. And in the US, it was the 10th best-selling game of December 2008, selling just over 497,000 copies. As of May 2009, the game had sold 3.38 million copies worldwide. So still sold really well.
But at the same time, think of how many Wiis were out there then and continue to have sold. So that's just a numbers game at that point. But yeah, it's Animal Crossing. It's a good series. I mean, but look, we'll see with New Horizons for Switch. Like, Switch is selling really well. That game is going to sell even more because Animal Crossing is more popular since then. Like, that game will sell gangbusters.
I expect that game to sell tidal waves of copies. The next Animal Crossing game, New Leaf, would not release until 2012. That's 4 years later. And outside of a slew of spin-offs such as Happy Home Designer and Pocket Camp, we have not seen a new mainline Animal Crossing release since in the past 6 years, until this Friday, where we will finally see the release of Animal Crossing New Horizons on Nintendo Switch. And I am very, very excited. I already have it preloaded on my Switch. It's ready.
Oh, dang. Yeah, I'm going to get it. And I think my girlfriend's going to get it. And we'll have 2 separate cards. But, just don't be a jerk if you're sharing on the same card. Just don't do that. Don't be that jerk.
Don't forget, it keeps one island per system, not per card.
Right.
So, just so everybody remembers. So, for the composer for this, we are actually going to focus, well, I say focus in the loosest possible terms, on Shiho Fujii. And when I say the loosest possible terms, I mean because she was born in 1984 and joined Nintendo's sound department in 2007. She attended the Senzoku Gakuen College of Music, and that is literally all of the information I could find.
Aww.
Unfortunate. But she does have quite the impressive discography since joining Nintendo. Her first project was Wii Fit. She then moved on to do Animal Crossing City Folk, obviously. Then she has also worked on New Super Mario Bros. Wii, New Super Mario Bros. U, and New Super Luigi U, which of course crosses over into the Switch release as well. She worked on The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, Mario Kart 8, Splatoon, and Splatoon 2, where notably she is the one that composed most of the music performed by the Squid Sisters. She worked on Super Mario Odyssey, and most recently, she worked on the soundtrack for Ring Fit Adventure. So she's worked on some heavy hitters, but there's just no background information that I can tell you, unfortunately.
It seems to be a trend often with Japanese Nintendo composers that are up-and-comers.
Mm-hmm. So, for some historical development research, the soundtrack of City Folk was done by Monika Kataoka, who we talked about during the New Leaf episode. At the time, she was credited as Monika Tominaga because she was not married yet. Shiho Fujii, obviously, and of course, Kazumi Totaka, who we discussed during the Luigi's Mansion episode. And as such, since he is involved, this is our third game featuring the wonderful Easter egg, Totaka's Song. While it can be heard by asking KK Slider to play KK Song, just like in all the other Animal Crossing games, it can also be heard one other way. While on the bus with Cap'n, let the screen just sit without advancing any of his text. And then after several minutes, he will begin whistling various songs, and then eventually, that song will be Totaka's Song. And as a piece of info, again, I need to make sure you understand just how similar City Folk and Wild World are. It is again worth noting, outside of a few songs, soundtrack of both games are virtually identical. So probably don't expect us to cover Wild World anytime soon, if ever.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
Because we basically are right now.
It's more or less the same. It does make me think of, I don't think I've seen an article talking about who's doing the composition work for Animal Crossing New Horizons.
I don't think I have either.
Because it makes me think that, if I had to guess, Monica Kataoka, who, as you said, did City Folk, did New Leaf. Maybe she helped some on this, but there's also that Breath of the Wild sequel. And she was pretty instrumental in Breath of the Wild soundtrack. So I wonder where her attention was split here, but good to highlight Shiho Fujii however you could. It's a name that does pop up in Nintendo music circles.
I would imagine that since New Horizons was so much farther along than Breath of the Wild 2, I'm going to be real. When they showed that trailer for Breath of the Wild 2, I don't think the game had even entered like pre-production yet or was in pre-production at the very least. I don't think they had anything done with that game. So it is very possible, I think, that Kataoka could have been working on New Horizons. And then now that it is done and out, she could have switched focus to Breath of the Wild 2. Potentially. Who knows? Hopefully we find out soon, because I wasn't thinking about that, honestly. I'm kind of interested in who's doing the music, because what I have heard of the music in New Horizons so far is very good.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But we're not here to talk about New Horizons. We're here to talk about City Folk Wild World. And we're going to do that with the 5 critical tracks, starting with Title. This song is a very, very relaxing theme played with a single guitar, and it sounds like, let me know if this makes sense to you. The song sounds like I'd hear it playing on a speaker in a Hobby Lobby.
A craft store or something like that, sure, yeah.
Yeah. But nevertheless, despite that, this song is actually really close to my heart. Every time I hear it, I kind of just get flooded with this relaxing feeling and this nostalgic feeling. And to me, this will always be the theme of Animal Crossing. And I really, really like this song. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, so many of these, if you're familiar with the Smash Brothers soundtrack, you're going to recognize a lot of these, and it's like, oh, that's how the original sounded, whether it was from City Folk or Wild World. I have to clarify with Hobby Lobby, like up here where I live, like we don't have Hobby Lobby. So to put some context for other Americans who may not have that chain,
it's a craft store, yeah.
Either a Michaels or a Joanne Fabrics would be the.
We have both of those here. We have all 3 here. That's weird. But yeah, I adore this piece. It reminds me of early high school, I think, more than anything. So, it's very good. Next, for number 2 on our Critical 5, it is 9 a.m. This is up there with my favorite hourly songs in the entire series, I think. Because it's just really groovy and catchy. Dun, 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 dun. Like, it's really fun. And it's really too bad that as an adult, I would basically never hear this song. Ever. Because if I'm up at 9 a.m., it's not to play Animal Crossing, unfortunately.
What? But when you can take your Switch anywhere with you, you just might have to play it at all hours of the day.
Don't tempt me. But like this song, though, it kind of has this feeling of like, yeah, it's time to get up and start the day. And just especially that drum track just really, really drives it forward. I really like this song.
It really hit me with this piece that, you know, the songs that I'll bring up for my game are songs that are going to punch you in the face. And this is like, no, this is simple. Life is good. Instruments are, they're but you know, it's the melody is what's key. The simplicity of the piece is what's key. And to just complement your relaxing experience. But I'd say enjoy these nice relaxing pieces now before we get into the intensity.
The contrast. And speaking of, well, I guess it's not a contrast, but speaking of relaxing pieces, let's talk about critical track number 3, Town Hall, Pelly. Fun fact, if you hear this song and don't whistle along, you're a cop. Plain and simple, you're a cop. And you're not going to trick me into... I don't remember the word, but you're not going to trick me. You are lying if you say you don't whistle to this song. It plays when you go to town hall during the day and talk to the receptionist, Pelly, who is a cute pelican girl who is always very happy to see you and loves her job. And this song is one of the ones that got remixed in Brawl to really great effect.
Sorry, I'm just thinking of The Departed. Are you a cop? Are you a cop?
But I do want to give a shout out, though, to the song, the version that plays if you go into the town hall at night. Because then you don't get to deal with Pelly. You get to deal with Phyllis, her sister, who hates you and the world.
I mean, detuned guitar is a choice.
It's a really... Here's the thing. It's thematically appropriate for Phyllis. I love this. Like, I am not kidding. I don't remember how much they showed up in New Leaf. But if you wanted to... like, they worked at the post office in New Leaf, didn't they?
I think so, yeah.
Except I don't think... They didn't switch off shifts in New Leaf, if I remember correctly. In Wild World and City Folk, it was Pelly during the day, and then if you went in at night, it was Phyllis, and Phyllis was mean, and she didn't like you, and she didn't like that she had to work, and she hated her job, and I think that this change in music very much reflects that. But going away from the unhappy parts, let's move on to critical track number 4, The City, Daytime. probably my favorite song in the game, honestly. And to be honest, it's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to talk about this game before I realized and remembered, oh right, it's the same soundtrack as Wild World. Whoops. The city felt really cool when I was younger. I'm sure if I went back to it as an adult, I'd go, this is nothing. There's nothing here. Cool. It was the happening place to be when I was first playing the game, though. And I think this is the song that I heard more than any other song in the game. And it really just sort of pushed that happening place feeling along. It is such a cheerful and delightful piece that has like a bustling yet peaceful attitude towards it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does have that energy. And if you're going to the city, if it's the big place to be, if it's called City Folk, you got to make this one of the standout pieces for sure. I feel like it was at this point that I really was telling myself like, oh no, I thought like I didn't know the soundtrack at all. So I was like going to this totally blind, and then I listened to the songs and it's like, oh no, I know like all of these from Smash. Like
this one got remixed in Wii U and 3DS, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's right. So, anyone listening out there is probably thinking the same thing. Like, but it's just interesting to compare from what you know to the instrument selection here.
Mm-hmm. I do want to give a bonus shout out though to the Rain version of this song. It is just a simple little music box style version that's just, I don't know, it's very good. It's very nice. There's also a snow version that is a little bit more Christmassy, but honestly, I think the Rain version just really hits the spot, honestly.
Would that tie into like the Weather Channel on the Wii and try to mirror what's happening in your local area?
Sadly, no. They should have, but no. It just sort of did random weather.
Nintendo, I'm giving you these ideas. Come on.
I believe it could be raining in the city when it wasn't at home, but I don't remember for sure. And the last track on our Critical 5 is, of course, 2 a.m. This song was composed by Kazumi Totaka, and it is probably the most famous of the Hourly songs, partially because it's really good, but also because it got a really good remix in Brawl. That's where I first heard it, at least.
It really did, yeah, wow.
And it's weird thinking about the fact that there are super late night songs in Animal Crossing. Like, yeah, you can go play Animal Crossing at 2 o'clock in the morning, but guess what? All the shops are closed. You can't do anything at 2 a.m. Everybody's asleep. What are you going to do? And yet, there's this peaceful little song hidden away in the late hours of the night. And it's good stuff, honestly.
You could have just as easily not had any music play at this time, but yet that's not Animal Crossing style.
There needs to be a song for every hour of the day, even if it's an hour that sane people would not be playing Animal Crossing. So, for tracks on the cutting room floor, Peter, you got 2. Hit me up.
First one, yeah. Even though I didn't play the game, like familiar enough with, I guess, this soundtrack now that it's so similar to Wild World that it has, melodies that are so familiar to Animal Crossing. And so one of them that I felt like was missing and needed to be here was The Roost. Is it another Brawl song? Sure it is! But it's also one that, yeah, granted, the piano is a little distorted, doesn't sound as good, but it's so calming. And, like, I always forget, like, just how lullaby-like it is. Like, it's one of the most lullaby-like songs in video games, I think. Such a good piece. And this plays when you're in the Roost, which is the cafe that's located downstairs in the museum in the game.
It doesn't really serve a purpose most of the time. You can go get coffee. The coffee doesn't do anything, but you can go get coffee and make friends with Brewster. And I guess that's honestly a reason enough. But also on Saturday nights in Wild World and City Folk, this is where KK Slider plays.
And that's just the place to be, absolutely. The other one on my cutting room floor here is 1 p.m. Yeah, look, I'm not as familiar with the different hourly songs, but I really liked the sound of this one, especially since you said that this was one that was like, it was really tough for you to leave off on the critical 5 here, and especially your cutting room floor. So I'm like, well, I was already going to pick the Roost, so I'll pick this one up too. And I agree, like it's such a happy song. I don't think you can really hate on any of the hourly themes. It's just so calming, so nice, peaceful.
It's really bouncy and nice. I like it. For my 2 cutting room floor themes, I have 1 a.m. 2 a.m. may be the big king of the late night songs, but this one's my personal favorite because it just feels really, really peaceful. Like everything is winding down, and honestly, it's kind of relaxing to a fault. Like this song kind of screams like, "Stop playing the game, go to bed." Because for those of you that started in New Leaf, this was before you could set your town to being a night-based town. And then, for my second track on the cutting room floor, I have 8 p.m. This is yet another one of those that I would consider the most well-known hourly songs. It is generally the one I think about when I think about the hourly songs personally, though I think 9 a.m. is a lot more iconic, so that's why it ended up on there and not this one. But this is the one I find myself humming a lot of the time when I think about this game. So what will I never forget about Animal Crossing City Folk? I mean, I already said, like, my sister and I bonded a bunch over this game. We did all sorts of stuff. It's one of the, 3 games that I can think of. Well, it's one of the 2 games that I can think of that both me and my sister played and bonded over. The other being the Ace Attorney, original Ace Attorney games. Mm-hmm. Other than that, it would have just been games that she watched me play and stuff like that. And, I don't know, that'll always be kind of important to me. But I'm very, very much looking forward to New Horizons because that game looks so good and we need it now more than ever. So at time of release, what, 3 days, 2 days, technically, if you consider the midnight release?
Yeah. I mean, we're getting close for sure. And that's definitely one of those games to bond over as long as you aren't a jerk.
Mm-hmm. So, for our transition, we like to highlight a YouTube remix or an OC remix or something like that. Fan cover, fan remix, something in those lines. I managed to find a channel that has done like 5 or 6 lo-fi hip-hop remixes of the hourly themes from Animal Crossing.
Perfect.
Really, really thematically appropriate and great. And just one more chance to relax you before we really get into it. So the channel was called Omili Music. That's Omili. And this is 11 p.m. lo-fi hip-hop remix. We will be right back.
All right, you babies, enough with this kitty relaxing, very calm and peaceful stuff. It's time for the real game. I can't keep that up the whole time. Killer Instinct, and we're not talking about the original game, which was originally in the arcades in 1994.
Have either of us played that game?
Yeah, no,
I've never played it.
There is the 1995 release of Killer Instinct on Super Nintendo. Those were developed by Rare, and we've talked about the Rare Killer Instinct games tangentially. We referenced it in particular in the Donkey Kong Country episode a couple weeks ago, where it was one of the games that really took like the whole 3D model into 2D sprite technology. Killer Instinct had a sequel, Killer Instinct 2 in 1996 on Super Nintendo, but then it was modified into Killer Instinct Gold on Nintendo 64 that same year. And then it waited. And waited. And when would a Killer Instinct 3 show up? And then it's E3 2013. And coming to your home in 2013, only on Xbox One. And it's the green screen, and it's the logo flashing, and there is Killer Instinct, releasing November 22nd, 2013 as a launch game on Xbox One. This was a game that broke out releases and characters into seasons. So Season 2 of Killer Instinct released on September 23rd, 2014. And then Season 3 waited about a year and a half, March 29th, 2016. This version added the Windows 10 PC version, along with crossplay to it. These days, if you wanted to play Killer Instinct, though, I think Killer Instinct Definitive Edition is probably the best way to go. It was released on September 20th, 2016. It bundles everything together, some things that were special pre-order DLC things, because just kind of lumps it all in. And it's a game that often goes on sale pretty cheap. I think when it's on sale, you can generally find it for about $10. So if this kind of game and its soundtrack interests you, that's probably the way to go. Killer Instinct had an interesting development sort of breakout throughout its multiple seasons. The original season was developed by Double Helix Games for that season 1, but then for season 2 and 3, it was developed by Iron Galaxy. Rare also played a supporting role for these games, and it was published by Microsoft Studios as a sort of second party-ish game, I guess you could say, since Microsoft didn't own those studios. It's a weird misnomer thing in the industry with that whole second party thing. Killer Instinct is a 2D fighting game. It's like Street Fighter, it's like Mortal Kombat, it's like these games that have really kind of lived on through a legacy, a great history. But like Mortal Kombat, started in the mid-90s and then continued on, except for when Killer Instinct didn't. So it's a really combo-heavy sort of based combat system. Known for a couple things that have turned into memes with the Ultra Combo! And then you also get the Combo Breaker. So those get used everywhere. And if you're wondering where that's all from, that's from the Killer Instinct series. One of the biggest additions for this installment, though, in particular, is called Instinct Mode, where you're filling like a secondary bar beneath the character's life bar. And each trigger, when this fills up, they can trigger a unique enhancement for a limited period of time. So, overall, the plot of Killer Instinct, God, well, I don't even know where I'd begin. I have zero idea. It's a fighting game, like, right? The story, the plot is so in the background. It's not that important. You play the arcade mode where it's just you're fighting all these different characters. So, this is apparently in a different timeline than Killer Instinct 2 because this 2013 version is meant to be seen as a reboot of the series. And so to take a quote from the Killer Instinct fandom page, quote, "The megacorporation Ultratech, while still as powerful as ever, is now perceived by the public as a humanitarian organization that seeks only the good of mankind. However, the cybernetic CEO, Arya, begins to drive humanity to the breaking point by testing them and pushing them further, attempting to force the humans to evolve for their own survival. Her tampering awakens ancient abominations, and soon the whole Earth is put in peril as part of Arya's final test." Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with Killer Instinct, the 2013 version in particular?
In terms of playing it, very little, because I never owned an Xbox One. I played it a little bit at one point when I went to visit you, where our friend Luke brought it, and we played it a bunch, and that's where I got introduced to the best fighting game character ever made. I'll talk about that later. And outside of that, it's pretty much all the soundtrack, because I listen to this game's soundtrack a lot.
Gosh, yes, absolutely. This is definitely a game where the soundtrack is God tier level. Like
I think it's one of the best soundtracks to come out the last decade.
Yeah, I think that's honestly a good point for it. Like it's up there with the Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. It's up there with Nier Automata. It's up there with like these soundtracks that are amazing, especially for, yes, the last decade, for sure. But it's a game I own on Xbox One. But I maybe have played 1 or 2 rounds of it. Like I have pretty much zero experience with the game itself. So as a result, even trying to look up research for this game, there's not that much I could find. But even then, like I don't have the nostalgia or the knowledge to really flesh out this. But definitely check out Cyberlink420 on Twitter. Our friend Luke, I'm sure, would love to talk about Killer Instinct at any point. At any time. So if you have any questions, he's the one to go to. But to kind of talk a little bit more about Killer Instinct, the 2013 version on Xbox One, the characters that were represented in the different seasons. Starting with Season 1, it was about Jago, Saberwolf, Glacius, Thunder, Sadira, Orchid, Spinal, Fulgor, and Shadow Jago. Season 2 brought TJ Combo, Maya, Kanra, Riptor, Omen, Aganos, Hisako, Cinder, and Arya. Season 3 was when they started to get, different fighting games are bringing in different characters and trying to implement crossovers here. So there was Rash from Battletoads. There's Arbiter from Halo. There's General Rom from Gears of War. There's also Kim Woo, Tusk, Mira, Gargos, and Idol. And then after Season 3, there were characters such as Kilgore, Shin Hisako, and Eagle. As late as March 2010, the original game for the original Killer Instinct, co-designer and then would-be game director of the reboot, Ken Lobb said during March 2010 that Killer Instinct 3 wasn't being worked on, but the series may come back someday. So when an application for a trademark renewal was brought up in September 2012 by Microsoft, of all companies, eyebrows were raised, though this was ultimately rejected by the United States Patent and Trademark Office due to the possibility of a future game being confused with an unrelated TV series of the same name that only lasted for 1 season in 2005. Fortunately, Microsoft smoothed things over with Fox. And so E3 2013 rolls around and it's an exciting reveal, and they bring out a demo, and remember, as, bringing in some news, E3 2020, not a thing among the COVID-19 casualties. But remember in E3 2013, how this was a time of the forced scripted or unscripted, whatever you say, dialogue during game demos. And if you happen to remember the game demo for Killer Instinct, there was a woman who was presenting, and she had to fight a producer on the game. And the producer, as part of trash talk, just said, just let it happen. It'll be all over soon.
I really hope that wasn't scripted.
They said it wasn't. And they had to apologize a lot because, yeah, awkward and a little rapey. That's pretty terrible. I doing the research was like, oh yeah, that was the thing, wasn't it?
I mainly remember it because of that video, that guy that used to do the summary videos of the of the conferences, because that's one of the jokes he made was they played that line and he was like, I really hope that wasn't scripted.
Yeah, a bit rough. The whole selling point of the game was that you could play Killer Instinct as a free-to-play game, especially on Xbox One, where it was exclusive for quite some time. At launch of the Xbox One, you could get the game free, and then Jago was the only playable character, but you had access to all of the modes. But if you wanted to play as other characters, you had to buy them either a la carte or get the whole Ultra package. Fortunately, that was only like $40, so it didn't go like full $60. So, fortunate there. But there were just so many different versions, and then over time, the free character would like rotate out, so it wasn't always Jago. There are so many different versions, like it just honestly makes my head spin, but you think like, oh yeah, that was kind of a product of the times, wasn't it?
It was an attempt at bringing a fighting game into the free-to-play space.
On console.
Yeah, not the greatest idea, but I mean, they tried.
They certainly did. I didn't know something on a technical level, though, and seeing it explained like this makes sense why when you watch and or play Killer Instinct, it seems like extra smooth, like buttery smooth, like most fighting games don't look and feel this smooth. Well, the game apparently runs at 90 frames per second and then renders its video at 60 to make both the offline local multiplayer as well as the online multiplayer just appear to play more fluidly. It just looks buttery smooth. The game also apparently has lower input lag compared to other comparable fighting games at that time. Like, even just watching game footage to kind of refresh myself, like, it's one of the smoothest fighting games you'll ever see.
Oh yeah, and it's also really fun to watch, and I never thought of that, actually. That's a weird way of doing that. I mean, it worked.
It certainly did, yeah.
But I can't... Would anybody else do... Is that like a thing?
Not like for Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or anything. Like even Guilty Gear. Like you think Guilty Gear could maybe get away with it, but no. Interesting. Odd that you mentioned a Metacritic of 73. Because
oh wow!
That was what season 1 of Killer Instinct was rated at launch. So yeah, fairly positively received. Generally the gameplay and the actual playing of the game was praised rather highly. And it's that whole easy to learn, difficult to master difficulty curve that fighting games strive for. But really the price model, as well as the seeming lack of content at the time, was some of the big hits against season 1. But as the game improved with updates and what have you, and then season 2 and season 3 roll around, and season 2 was rated with a Metacritic of 85, season 3 with an 86. So it's pretty well regarded as a really good sort of fighting game package nowadays. But at the time, it wasn't too noted as far as the award front, though. I mean, yeah, it would be nominated for Best Fighting Game at places like the Game Awards, but at the same time, like, how many fighting games come out in a year. Really? Although, oddly enough, the game won an ASCAP, an ASCAP, Film and Television Music Award for Video Game Score of the Year for Killer Instinct Season 3. Oddly enough, not the season I would have guessed would have won an award, but that's really interesting. And overall, Killer Instinct doesn't have too much of a legacy. I feel like, yes, it does carry over well in a complete definitive edition package, especially when you're talking about moving to the next generation later this year with Xbox Series X and whatnot, and it being fully backwards compatible. I'm sure Killer Instinct would look amazing on systems like that. It looks amazing on Xbox One and Xbox One X, but a sequel probably is not in the works, just as a guess.
Unfortunate.
I mentioned last week that we were going to talk about Tom Salta this week. And there's a reason why I thought that. But the more I started digging into the soundtrack here, I figured it would be most appropriate to bring back someone who you thought you were going to talk about for Donkey Kong Country. And that would be Robin Beanland. Don't worry. We'll get to Tom Salta eventually. There's a little game called Red Steel that I am itching to eventually talk about, and so we'll talk about Tom Salta there. Robin Beanland, however, born August 27th, 1968, born in Leeds in Yorkshire, England. Currently, he lives in northwest Leicestershire. Robin Beanland started playing the trumpet at age 7, and apparently he was well commended for this. He says he achieved the ABRSM, which is Associated Board of the Royal School of Music, reached that distinction in grades 3 through 8 for his trumpet playing, and has an O level in music. I'm going to guess that's like outstanding if Harry Potter scoring systems are anything to match, but I'm just going to take it like that's really, really good.
There's levels in music?
I'm guessing, not familiar with how England in particular teaches music. But during his trumpet playing, he got really into Miles Davis and jazz in particular. So he was encouraged to learn how to play the keyboard, especially to understand how chords worked. And from here, he got really into the keyboard. He joined a rock band called Brazil, and they even got a BBC Radio 1 session on Tommy Vance's rock show. But when the band broke up, he started working in a recording studio and starting to learn how to use all the different equipment, tape decks and synthesizers and things like that. He eventually wrote music for some TV series and ads in Britain. But when his brother mentioned that there was a company in the Midlands that they were looking for musicians, he decided to give it a shot, and that was Rare. Robin Beanland got started with Rare in 1994 and has been there ever since. The original Killer Instinct was his first project, and because he's in-house at Rare, he gets to work with the team on projects basically right from the get-go, right from the start. He says that his favorite project to date has been Sea of Thieves, just because of the freedom that's possible and what players can do with the openness of the world and how he gets to adapt to music and kind of help predict that. And he says that he is especially proud of his track Becalmed from Sea of Thieves. When asked about what his favorite games are if he had to pick 3, he said Zelda, Splinter Cell, and Halo 2. Granted, this was in the mid-2000s when Halo 2 was one of the big games at the time. He said he would love to collaborate with Hans Zimmer and Imogen Heap, and he won a couple awards, particularly for his composing work. He won a BAFTA for his work on Conker's Bad Fur Day, and an Ivor Novello award, which these different British articles were saying, like, this is a really prestigious award, this is such a big honor. I have never heard of an Ivor Novello award.
Yeah, that's a new name to me.
But he won it for his work on Sea of Thieves. Had a couple interesting quotes just thinking about music composition and how players are interacting with it. Quote, depending on what the character is doing and the way he or she is moving around the level, they, the players, are triggering different music cues. They're becoming the arranger of the music. so I have to think of the ways to get the player excited about the experience. Especially when it comes to an open world game like Sea of Thieves, that's certainly something to think about. But he, like other creatives, don't worry, you're not alone out there. He also struggles. He says the toughest part of the job is, quote, sometimes I do just stare at a blank canvas. Sometimes the music will land quickly, and other times I really have to work at it. So it's hard, but enjoyable. During his home life, he has a wife and 2 kids, a beagle named Jasper, and he really enjoys cycling. You can follow Robin Beanland on Twitter at TheRealBeano, which is a great handle.
That's a really, really good handle.
Some of the most notable discography elements for his time at Rare, whether it was, fully composing a project or helping compose music on the project. We did mention Donkey Kong Country, how he wrote Funky's Fugue, and that was originally an original Killer Instinct track. So there is that. We have mentioned his name before on this show. Obviously, Killer Instinct 2, Killer Instinct Gold, GoldenEye 007, Jet Force Gemini, Conker's Bad Fur Day, where he also co-wrote the script of that game with Chris Seaver, the director and also the voice of Conker. Banjo-Kazooie, Nuts and Bolts, Connect Sports Season 2, and also Connect Sports Rivals, Fable Heroes, Sea of Thieves, and in November 2019, at the XO19 conference, Microsoft revealed the next Rare project called Everwild, and Robin Beanland is composing the music for that as well. When it comes to the 2013 Killer Instinct soundtrack, I mentioned Robin Beanland because the foundation of his music for the original Killer Instinct games really served as like a guidance point for the composer of the first 2 seasons. And that composer is one legendary Mick Gordon. We talk about Mick Gordon, of course, because with March 20th, 2020 coming up, with Animal Crossing New Horizons and Doom Eternal is set to be another killer Mick Gordon soundtrack with using the Doom instrument and all of that. But we in particular love Mick Gordon's work on the Killer Instinct soundtrack.
This was my introduction to Mick Gordon's work.
Yeah, and so it's something that we are very partial to, but Mick Gordon was driven by a lot of the melodies that Robin Beanland wrote for the original Killer Instinct. And so I was going to talk about Tom Salta originally for this, because Mick Gordon did compose Season 1 and Season 2. I composed, arranged, performed a lot of the guitars, mixed it, did a lot of the work on it. But famously, he did not compose Season 3 of Killer Instinct because, as we mentioned in our Doom 2016 episode, Mick Gordon moved to this Doom project, and so the Season 3 duties for Killer Instinct were moved to musicians Atlas Plug and Cell Dweller. And Atlas Plug is a stage name for Tom Salta. Cell Dweller is a stage name for Clayton, or Clayton Albert. So that was going to be the tie-in for another composer, because I'd love to talk about Mick Gordon again, but we already talked about Mick Gordon on this podcast. That said, when going through the soundtrack and seeing just how important some of these classic songs were to Mick Gordon's guidance of really amping it up for a new generation, I figure we finally had to talk about Robin Beanland, especially when you almost did for Donkey Kong Country.
Mm-hmm. So finally got him in there.
Absolutely. So the soundtracks in particular for Season 1 and 2 are notable in that they not only include tracks from the current game, but they also included the tracks from the soundtrack of the original game. So Season 1 had the tracks from the 1995 Killer Instinct game. Season 2 had the tracks from Killer Instinct 2. And these tracks on the soundtrack are really long. They aren't just simple loops because they involve like different versions. Some of them are like full songs, and then at least I think all of them even go through an idle part of the song, an idle theme where you're on the stage, and if players like don't interact for a while, like the music will react appropriately and die down and be like this really chill version of the song before the action picks up again and then really gets right in your face. like, it's kind of great that these songs are so long, especially for certain ones when you just throw it on Spotify or wherever and you listen. It's a experience, but even in the track, it has these ups and then it has these kind of idle lulls.
And it's super cool to hear in, like, quote unquote motion, I guess is how you'd put it. If you've never watched a Killer Instinct match, you should go change that.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about how Doom 2016 is just this legendary score and how it fits the mood so perfectly. Well, Mick Gordon kills it again. And so when I mentioned how Animal Crossing City Folk is these nice, calming little pieces with these simple instruments, prepare for the complete opposite end of the spectrum here. As we get into the 5 critical tracks, we will start, of course, with The Instinct.
Killer Instinct.
Yes, of course, Mick Gordon arranged the piece, but this was originally composed by Robin Beanland because it's the main theme of the game. It's taking off that classic Killer Instinct theme and just really cranking it up to where people, fans and non-fans alike, say, like, yeah, this is the best version of this theme that's ever been made. It's what revealed the game at E3 2013. It had to. Like, this is the Killer Instinct theme. And it's a pretty common leitmotif throughout the soundtrack in different tracks here and there.
Especially in Season 2. I believe every single song in Season 2 has a point where it just sort of lowers down. Or I guess not even lowers down, but it has a point where it plays this leitmotif in full.
Yeah, just the din 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 din, like even just that little bit. Like it's a classic bit. And it's a bit slower than the previous versions of the song for the past games. But it really invokes this just powerful, heavy metal sound. And I feel like powerful, heavy metal is like the perfect way to describe this soundtrack. And it's fitting because, like, yeah, this reboot is darker. It's got this grittier tone and direction. And yeah, man, it just punches you in the face. It's so good.
I agree. This song rules. And just, this is one of those songs where it's like, can you picture like an intro to a TV series?
Oh.
Like a Netflix style TV series with this song like opening?
One that you don't skip ever?
Oh, it would be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be so good. Such a great piece. And we're only just getting started. Number 2 on the Critical 5. This is Type 03. So this is the theme to Fulgore, and Fulgore is a classic Killer Instinct character. I believe he's actually like the antagonist of Season 1, created by Ultra Tech. Just like the last character that you fight in like the story mode generally. But yes, high speed metal. Like it's intense. It's one of the better songs on that Season 1 soundtrack along with the Instinct. So yeah, these are both from Season 1 here. And yeah, I really am partial to this one. And it's fitting for like an end game sort of boss for this beginning part of the game.
I have one, honestly, obviously on the cutting room floor where I think that's more my favorite Season 1 song. But yeah, the song like is face meltingly good.
Mm-hmm.
Still, like even still, It's just speed metal is a very good way to put it. The I can barely do it with my mouth. And just I love Fulgore's design in this game. It's so cool. The like almost holographic hand blades, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like they look like they're holograms almost. He's so cool. His theme is really cool. I think I have 2 season 2 songs. Or no, just 1 season 2 song that I can think of. No, it's 2. I have 2 season 2 songs that I would have been fighting myself over to put on before this one, but I agree. It's still like even my third choice is still really good.
And I really wanted to try to balance it here, right? Get a couple from season 1, a couple from season 2. We'll throw in one from season 3. But yeah, this one it's a contender up there. And yeah, you're right. It's intense. And then even just the wailing, like, oh man. So good. I think season 2 is the hypest album though. The hypest
100%.
soundtrack. And we got to hit that tape deck and start it with the first track on that second soundtrack. Number 3 on the Critical 5 here is I'm Back to Rise.
Forever, you can't stop my reign. I'm back to, let the truth be told. I feel on fire when my passion flows. I'm back to, let the truth be told. I feel on fire when my passion flows. Put 'em up, show me what you got. I wanna see how you rock, if you're great or not. Wanna take my spot, better train the box. I put the game on lock and my ring won't stop. I'm back to.
Yes. Let's get into it.
Such a hype track.
This is the hypest song to ever be put into a video game.
So, of course, Mick Gordon did, some of the composition, the arrangement, and all that. But this also does borrow some additional original composition from Robin Beanland through his original song Combo, because this is TJ Combo's theme. He's a boxer. And so, it's rap with a heavy metal backing beat. And just like the electronic bass to it, just so intense. Vocals by Omega Sparks, who does the rapping, but also supporting vocals from Ali Edwards and Faye Newborough. Hype.
This song is like a shot of adrenaline in audio form.
It will get you excited for your day, no matter what. You listen to it in the morning. And I feel bad for people who are like, if they say like, well, I don't like rap in video games. Look, if you think that's the case for yourself, we present this to you. And also it's Mick Gordon doing a rap beat behind it.
It's so good. This is my favorite song in the entirety of the Killer Instinct soundtrack. By far, no doubt, 100%.
It's incredible. It's so different, and it really, really delivers. I agree. I think it had to totally be here. Number 4 on the Critical 5. This is Inferno. Vocals added here by Little V Mills. Little V Mills we've talked about on this show for a fan remix, fan cover. A big guitarist player. Would not surprise me if he contributed guitars to this as well, in addition to Mick Gordon. Just a great musician. So good to see him on this one. And because like this is like the guitar shredding piece of all guitar shredding pieces on Killer Instinct's soundtrack here. This is for the aptly named Inferno. Who is just this big fireman. Kind of like the antithesis of Glacius. Yeah, interesting. But the guitars sound so good, especially with that guitar solo. And I feel like we've talked about some guitar songs where it's like the main riff is so good and so intense and so energetic that you could just listen to it on loop. So the like, and then it speeds up over the piece, especially near the end, to like insane levels. I could listen to it all the time. I really, really like this one. I do think I'm Back to Rise is like, it's more hype, but if you're just looking for like guitar metal, it's this one for sure.
I think this one also has my favorite version of the Instinct leitmotif. Because it's just, everything quiets down for a second, and then it's just this, I don't know how to explain it, but this solo of the Instinct, it's so, this song rules. This is probably among like top 5 for sure for me, 100%.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's so mellow, and it's using like the mid guitar strings, not like the high wailing ones. But it's so chill, and they really like take off a lot of the metallic grindy plugins on it. It's just a really a chill jazz-like almost guitar in a way. Oh yeah, you're absolutely right. Like it's a great Idol theme on this one for sure. And to round out the Critical 5, I had to throw a Season 3 track in there. So I think the best one here is Nocturne in Blood. So this one is composed by Atlas Plug and Cell Dweller. This is the theme to Mira. And Mira is a vampiress. So it's good that the heavy beats remain here, because the rest of the song sounds just totally different, right? And it makes sense. Different composers, sounds different, but it still keeps like the core fundamentals of just like the heavy in-your-face music. But there's like a little more electronic dubstep going on. There's also like this gothic sounding violin, which kind of fits the whole vampire theme. I just feel like instead of like, oh, just borrow a Halo song remix or a Battletoads one, because they're bringing in the guest characters. As far as like an original composition for like this game, I really like this one in particular.
This was my first time hearing this song today. I'm not super familiar with the Season 3 soundtrack.
Because it's not Mick Gordon.
That's actually probably why, which, no disrespect to these two, because upon hearing this song, the song's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that really got me was scrolling down to the comments of this video and just all the JoJo references. All of the JoJo references, because guess what? This song sounds super JoJo.
Interesting.
Specifically, it sounds super Part 3 JoJo, which involves Dio, a vampire.
Oh, well, there you go. Right on cue.
But yeah, this song is really good. I should go listen to Season 3's soundtrack, because this has piqued my interest at least a little bit.
Excellent. Very, very good. When it comes to tracks on the cutting room floor, we each have 2. Joe, let's hear yours.
You didn't even have to ask me about this one before you just went ahead and put it in my cutting room floor, because you were correct. This was on my cutting room floor. And that is Village of Whispers.
I just wanted to be a good friend and have you talk about this one.
You saved me time. I mean, it was gonna go on here anyways. Lyrics by Erica Mariko Olsen, Casey Edwards, Ali Edwards, and vocals by Erica Mariko Olsen. This is the theme of Hisako. And Hisako is, and I do not say this lightly, the greatest character design to ever be put in any fighting game in the history of the genre. If you disagree with me, feel free to @me on Twitter, @thedebaga. Bring it. You're wrong, though, and it'll only tell me how wrong you are. Everything from the way she moves, to the way she looks, to most of all, her theme is perfect, and I love her. She's a Japanese Onryo spirit, and so to reflect this, the song's in Japanese, and it's so cool.
So what you're trying to say is it's all about the way she moves, the way she moves. Okay, I'm done. All right.
In very many ways, it is exactly about the way she moves. Like, the way she's animated to be all jerky and unnatural looking. Oh, they killed it. It's so good. She's so good. She sold me on Killer Instinct by herself.
Yeah, and the song is amazing. The Japanese lyrics really sell it, but that metal backing, though, it's incredible. Such a good song. Really hated to leave this one off, but I knew you wanted to talk about it, and yeah, absolutely.
And for the other one, man, there's so many it could be. Like Hinamatomb, could have been Warlord.
Warlord was real tough to leave off for sure.
Could have been so much, but I think, for my money, if I had to only pick one more, it would be Lycanthropy. This was originally composed by Robin Beanland. The original track is called Tooth and Claw. It is the theme of Saberwolf. And it's super weird. But like, as somebody that used to play the violin, I have a deep respect for this song. It's really chaotic. It's very hammy, while still keeping like a creepy atmosphere to it. Because I mean, it's the theme of a werewolf. It's such a well done piece. Absolutely one of my favorites in the whole game. If I remember correctly, I learned about this soundtrack through your old show, Temple Control.
Yep.
And if I remember correctly, you mentioned in that episode that this song was specifically made. Their goal was to make it sound like they were dodging a werewolf in the orchestra pit while playing the song.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good description.
Yeah, it is really different for sure. And it kind of makes me think of Bloodborne a little bit.
A little bit.
I don't know if that's totally on point, but...
No, I hear you. I think I understand where that's coming from, yeah.
My tracks on the cutting room floor. First one is Herald of Gargos. Gargos being one of these sort of cosmic threats in a way. And so when you have his heralds, I guess this theme is borrowed for two characters, being Omen and Shadow Jago. The main composition, of course, Mick Gordon. Mick Gordon, this is part of Season 2, so Mick Gordon, but Robin Beanland, his original composition work, comes from the themes of Gargos and The Instinct. Vocals here by Christopher De Leon, where he's really having these chants of somebody in the Jago, like really getting into it. And so it's this face melting, another really heavy piece on the guitar, but then it has this little splash of lightness with these plucked strings. It's just such a really good piece that it does borrow a lot from, I think, Jago's theme, but then it just blasts out this whole full sound of electric guitars and all that. Great song. An interesting trivia bit about the song, though, the track length of this song is actually 5:44. And then the track on the soundtrack stays silent until 7:22, when it's a small acoustic version of The Instinct that plays. And if you're counting, that break in between is 99 seconds, which is the length of a Killer Instinct match, or really any fighting game. But to go through that level of thought, that's such a Mick Gordon thing. So good. Love it.
Yeah, but it still annoys me when I listen to the song and there's just a minute and a half of silence. Like, it actually kind of annoys me. But now knowing that, though, might annoy me a little bit less. But I love this song.
Oh,
This does not seem like the kind of song I would really enjoy that much. I absolutely adore this song. I think it's, like, again, among top 5.
Yeah, it's super good, and it really was really difficult to leave off, for sure. I'll wrap up my cutting room floor here, though, with Touch Me and I'll Break Your Face.
AKA the best title in the game.
Great title. Great song. Lyrics by Ali Edwards, Casey Edwards. Vocals by Ali Edwards. And Faye Newborough. You know, we've mentioned Ali Edwards a few times on here. But this is the first song where the lyrics were from Ali Edwards and Casey Edwards. And vocals from Ali. And what song have we mentioned in the past few months? Let's say on a special episode where those credits follow. If you think this sounds a lot like Devil Trigger from Devil May Cry 5, that's probably because it's the same credits and the same singer. So this is the theme for Orchid. It has this very poppy 90s energy like the original game, but it's that Mick Gordon heavy backing that really pushes it through. And it's so good that it was actually recognized as the best original vocal song, with the pop distinction, at the 12th annual Game Audio Network Guild Awards. So Gang, we've mentioned on the show before. So it's so good, it won an award in the Gang group.
It song's really fun to sing along to.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just like Devil Trigger. Go figure, they know how to write a really catchy song.
Eventually, we're going to have to talk about them.
I mean, yeah.
Gotta find a way, gotta find a place.
Absolutely. What will I never forget about 2013's Killer Instinct? You know, it can't be anything really about the game. I've hardly played it, but this soundtrack is among my favorites. And Mick Gordon is just a god. He's incredible. I'm really excited to hear his work on Doom Eternal this week. So I felt like there were no other games to talk about, especially with Animal Crossing and Doom. But, we'll do another Animal Crossing game, sure, but can't do another. Like, we gotta talk Mick Gordon. So there's this game, but we can't talk about Mick Gordon again. So who do we talk about? And so if you're thinking about like the behind the scenes of what we're working with here, but I'm so glad we finally got to talk about Killer Instinct, this version specifically.
I think this was as good a time as ever to bring Killer Instinct to the table. We could have done like a classic Doom, but I agree. I wanted to talk about Mick Gordon. And so it's our show and we did it. Sure, we'll bring the original Doom or something eventually. I don't know. We'll find out. I don't think either of us have ever played it. And I can't imagine either of us are in a hurry to go play it.
Will E1M1 be on our Critical 5? Yeah, probably.
But I will state once again, I think this is probably among the top 5, if not top 3 best soundtracks of last decade. For sure, 100%.
It really is incredible. So I know we talked about wolves as a theme at the top. But honestly, I think it's all about like the anthropomorphized characters. And maybe like Jago is like this villager in a way, a comparable comparison there. But like Animal Crossing is a happy world, a world gone right. Killer Instinct is like a world that's bleak and has fallen to coronavirus. I don't know. Like we're just kind of tying everything in here this week. But that will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at Pete Speakeasy. Joe is over at The Debaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com. but it's that MP3 podcast version you want on Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. The best place you can get it, though, is on podcast storefronts all around the globe. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you get your podcasts, even on Spotify. So Spotify, we have not only our podcast feed, but also this building list of songs that if we talk about on the show here, we're going to put it on this big Spotify playlist. Anything added this week, Joe?
Unfortunately, as to be expected, City Folk is obviously not on Spotify because it is a first-party Nintendo title, and they still haven't caught up with the times. But Killer Instinct is on Spotify, and so, yes!
Just play that whole soundtrack, all those soundtracks, like it's so good, but definitely listen also to that original Soundchat Spotify playlist that Joe puts together. And then when you're done with all of that, come find us on social media at Soundchat OST and interact with us. Leave feedback on how we're doing with these episodes, things you'd like to see improve, and also suggestions for games that you'd like us to talk about on the future on the show. So we're also doing bonus tracks. Like mentioned last week, 2018 and 2017 lists, top 10s are done. You gotta fill them out, though, and start editing it for sure. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Toshiki Konishi.
I will be talking about Lin Inaizumi. Feel like the theme of that will be a little more on the nose.
Very much so.
So, to play us out, talking about that fan cover, fan remix, YouTube OC remix, what have you, I feel like for Killer Instinct, we've got to mention The Instinct. And so, a track that I found kind of threw back a little more to like the original, but kind of did like a blend of like some guitars, but also some electronics. And I feel like it was a good blending of the two styles here. So this comes from the band on YouTube, Dark Nexus. And this is their take on The Instinct. Thank you so much for listening to us this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.